Last time we spoke, we were looking into JavaScript and how JavaScript works and a little bit about the syntax and applications and web applications, but now we want to get into actual vulnerabilities and understanding what they are and how do we test for them and how do we execute them. So we need to take a step back from JavaScript and our cross-site scripting a little bit to focus on a little bit more of the framework and theoretical side of things. So in this lecture, we're going to go over the OWASP project as well as testing and an introduction to testing and what to look for and how to look for things and how to even start learning about vulnerabilities and exploits and bugs. So keeping these kinds of things in mind, here are our goals. I want you to kind of keep in mind what is a vulnerability coming out of this lecture. What is it? What is an exploit? How do you start learning them and where do you go and how do you find the important ones? And then in addition to that, we're going to be talking about the OWASP project. We're going to be getting to that towards the end. So let's start super high level, just to kind of recap what we talked about so far. Vulnerability is a weakness which can be exploited by a threat actor to cross privilege boundaries within a computer system, essentially breaking things. That's just a quick blurb from Wikipedia. If we talk about an exploit is a piece of software, a chunk of data, a sequence of commands, something that takes advantage of the vulnerability itself. So you can have a vulnerability and an exploit, they kind of go hand in hand. You can't really have an exploit without a vulnerability, but you can have vulnerabilities without exploits, if that makes any sense. So how are vulnerabilities found and exploits developed? It's just testing. If you're interested in this kind of material, this is exactly what you're going to be doing. You're going to be hunting for vulnerabilities, and you're going to be using exploits that are either off the shelf or exploits that you create in order to carry those attacks out. So let's talk about testing. There's a couple of different kinds of testing methodologies that you will encounter, the first of which is black box testing. Imagine you are looking at an application and it is just a box. A black box essentially you can't see through. So in this case, a black box test would be you have no access to the application source code, either from your client or whatever it is you're working on. You can't see how it works, because knowing how it works can help you more easily identify how it can be abused. The complete opposite of that is a white box kind of test. You have full access to the application source code. You can see how the application works, how it handles input, how it handles data and processes it. And then you can also use that hand in hand to develop attacks against it. And then somewhere in the middle there is a gray box. A gray box test is where you have a little bit of both. You may have some access to the application source code or maybe some developer documents provided to you by who you're testing with, but at the end of the day you don't have full control over it. Ultimately your job is to figure out what is in that box and how it works, what makes it tick and how it can break. Whether or not you have access to the source code is, it depends on who you're working with and how you're working with them. But at the end of the day, you're still going to have to figure it out and figure out ways to take advantage of it. So let's talk a little bit more about vulnerabilities and weaknesses. There are a ton of resources out there for this. There are a ton of different institutes and standards for tracking vulnerabilities and weaknesses and configurations and things like that, but I do just want to highlight a few of them. For example, NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, they are kind of the baseline for a lot of security standards out there. So if you ever hear of system hardening, a lot of system hardening for Windows and Linux and Mac and things like that come from NIST. NIST puts together a set of standards for that, but they also track vulnerabilities. So any vulnerabilities that are disclosed are tracked with NIST as well. In addition to that, MITRE has the CWE framework, which is Common Weakness Enumeration. These are not necessarily weaknesses in specific systems, but they are more so classes. So thinking back to our cross-site scripting exercise a little bit earlier, the point of injection is a common weakness for applications, but a cross-site scripting vulnerability found in a specific application would be an actual vulnerability. So it's weaknesses that are more common across all kinds of software. There is ExploitDB, which is maintained by Offensive Security, and these are published and disclosed exploits. So anytime there is some kind of exploit that's been published, released into the public for people to see and understand, exploits are kind of hosted here. ExploitDB does a really good job of picking those up and storing them for security researchers, because you can really learn a lot by the mistakes of others in the past, based on the exploits. Unfortunately for them, but fortunately for us as researchers as well. And then, of course, last but not least, we have the OWASP, which gets its own slide. OWASP is the Open Web Application Security Project, nonprofit organization founded in 2001, and it's a community-led sort of project. They put together a whole bunch of different documentations, methodologies, tools, training, just like you see on screen, but they also put together a lot of frameworks for security, for helping organizations bolster their security, not just their applications, but also their people and processes within companies. One of the biggest things that OWASP puts out is their top 10 list of vulnerabilities. It is sort of a listicle, but it is incredibly important because they periodically go through and they talk about what are the common vulnerabilities that really impact us today. Alright, so talking about OWASP 2017 version, it's a top 10 list of vulnerabilities regardless of tech stack that's being used. So whether the backend is written in Golang or PHP or JavaScript, it doesn't really matter. These are classes of vulnerabilities that impact all sorts of applications based on what they survey and what they find out in the real world. It includes vulnerabilities, tests, and remediation strategies too for each different finding. We'll get into what the vulnerabilities actually are a little bit later, but for each one they teach you as a researcher, how do you know if your web application is vulnerable to this? And also as a maintainer of a service or a program, what remediation strategies are at your disposal to help mitigate these risks? The latest version was released in 2007. At the time of this recording, that was 4 years ago. But right now they are currently transitioning into a 2021 version. So it's kind of an in-between phase of the OWASP Top 10. So just kind of like I mentioned, they do release these every few years. That's because tech stacks change so much and the threat landscape changes so much as well. And while the order does seem to vary a little bit, you know, maybe the number 1 might get bumped down to a number 4, and number 6 might come to a number 3. The ranking change, the vector is mostly all still the same, and will be repeated throughout the OWASP's life, I'm sure. As more and more things break, the same mistakes keep getting repeated, new attack vectors open up, so it's always a changing landscape. So if we look at the 2017 list, this is what we're going to be focusing on for the next few lectures, as well as I actually start teaching you the vulnerabilities and how they work. The reason we're using 2017 one is because, in my opinion, the 2021 version doesn't have a lot of good tangible vulnerabilities to work with. It's a great list, but for learning exploits, it's a little bit harder to use that as a starting footprint because, like you see on the screen, the A number 9, using components with known vulnerabilities. That is a vulnerability in itself, but it's difficult to fully test a web application that just uses vulnerable components, because the vulnerable components might not actually make the application itself vulnerable, depending on how it's implemented. So there's a lot of those items in the 2021 version, so we're going to be using the 2017 version. More specifically, about 8 out of 10 of these are actively exploitable. They're not just things that service owners should be thinking about, but they're things an attacker should be thinking about too. And now if we highlight the ones that we're going to be focusing on, here's what we're going to be looking at. We're going to be looking at injection, broken authentication, sensitive data exposure, broken access control, and cross-site scripting, which we've already touched upon, but it is worth mentioning. It is in the OWASP for 2017, and we have already taken a look at that, but we will be looking at others going forward. So how do you practice vulnerabilities? We kind of talked about at the very, very beginning of these lectures that hacking is pretty illegal if you just do it on somebody's site and they don't give you consent to do it. And that's a huge problem. Computer fraud is no joke, and you can go to jail, and probably will go to jail if you are caught. So it's important to practice in a safe place. What I'm going to be using to demonstrate the OWASP Top 10 is actually OWASP's own Juice Shop. Juice Shop was designed to be a capture the flag event. So a place where security researchers and hackers and pen testers can actually go and safely and legally practice their skills against a site that is intentionally vulnerable. So the Juice Shop itself is intentionally vulnerable. It's meant to be broken. It's meant to teach you things, and that's what we're going to be using it to do. So Docker's Hub, has a really good explanation of how to set up Juice Shop. There are a lot of different ways you can do it. You can use it using Docker, you can use it on Heroku, you can deploy it on a virtual machine or whatever. But I'm going to go over one particular way in the next lecture to kind of go up how the Juice Shop can be set up, as well as how to navigate it and how it works. And we'll see you in the next lecture.